Hey YouTube, I just wanted to post a video real quick about Obama's speech yesterday and kind of go over some of the highlights of the speech and kind of go into a little bit of what's some of the feedback that I've received. So first of all, we're going to talk about Obama's gun control legislation facts. So a couple things that he said in his speech. One is federal executive actions or his executive orders. Federal agencies to report more information to the federal background check system. So through federal or executive order, he can do this. This is a current law that the federal agencies are supposed to be submitting all this information to the check systems. However, what he's basically saying, he's going to be a little bit more strict on it, and he's going to make sure that they follow through on it, which is fine. I mean, actually, through an executive order, he can do that. Directing the Centers of Disease Control for researching gun violence. So this is another thing that he can and really can't do. He can authorize the CDC to research gun violence. However, the money allocated to the CDC comes from Congress. So he can't just give them money. He said he's going to dedicate $10 million to a fund that does nothing but research gun violence. He technically can't do that piece of it. He can't take our national budget and allocate what he wants to each department, or however, that has to all go through the budget committee. So he can tell them, hey, you needed to research this, but then Congress can say, well, we're not going to fund it. So it kind of goes nowhere. Some of the new gun control legislation that he mentioned was universal background checks. So what they're trying to do is do universal background checks. Now this is very vague what he said. Now I know Dianne Feinstein will come out with a very elaborate bill that will talk about registration and all that stuff, which will never pass. But what he's basically saying, his speech was very vague, and he's letting the lawmakers, what he said, he goes, I'm going to let the lawmakers come up with the bills that make sense and to approve it and send it to the floor. But that's basically what he wants, some universal background checks, which, some of the private sales, I think they're just wanting to make sure that you're not selling to, a criminal or felon or whatever. Assault weapons ban, of course, that we knew that was coming. Ammunition clips that hold more than 10 bullets. I posted this exactly how it was said, ammunition clips. That's awesome. He can take all my clips. I don't really care because I don't really have any. I have magazines. But anyway, they want to do the 10 bullet ban, which everybody knows that's done any research understands that the magic 10 bullets will solve all crime in America. So that's a good fun fact there. And we knew the assault weapons ban was coming. So the administration basically wants to reinstate the 94 assault bans, kind of what he said. That's where they got most of these ideas from. But I think that when Dianne Feinstein and their little gang of anti-constitutionalists, they're actually going to throw a lot more hardcore measures in there. Like I said, none of that will pass. The magazine of 10 bullets won't even pass. I'm going to tell you that right now. Some of the things I want to discuss real quick, standing up to the tyranny. So there's been many organizations and many people, many states, so forth, that's kind of came out and kind of gave their rebuttal to any gun legislation. So I wanted to kind of outline that. This was done last night. However, today I've got a lot more information. Oregon and Texas, sheriffs already came out and said they would not confiscate any guns or enforce any federal law they deemed unconstitutional. Now we've gotten Kentucky. There was one from Mississippi. They're all over the place now, coming out and saying we are not going to enforce any gun laws that are unconstitutional. So what does that really mean? Well, if a gun ban does get passed, they're not saying that they're not going to recognize it as far as enforcing a gun ban, because what a gun ban is going to do if one does get passed, and it kind of depends on what does get passed, so we're all kind of assuming here, but let's just say like the 94 assault ban gets passed again. They can't tell manufacturers, oh, you can go ahead and keep making firearms even though there's assault weapons ban, because we're not going to acknowledge it. They can't do that because firearm manufacturers do come under under the federal arm if they're doing intercommerce with different states. But what I think this will do is if they say we need registration, we need confiscation, then they'll say there's no way I'm doing that. Or if they come and say we're going to take only the assault weapons, you need to turn them in, and you get caught with an assault weapon, I keep using the word assault weapon, it's really not an assault weapon, but that's what they keep calling it. If you get caught with one in your car, they're probably going to say, I don't care, have it. But either way, it's good news at least to see that these community leaders of law enforcement are standing up and saying enough's enough. Alaska, Arizona, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Wyoming, and Texas are looking to pass laws. I think Montana might already have one to the floor. Basically, exempts guns made in the state from any federal regulation. What that means is if you have let's say Texas, let's say you have a gun manufacturer in Texas, they can, even though there's assault weapons ban, they can keep manufacturing that assault weapon as long as they don't ship it out of state. So they can ship it to all their distributors and dealers in-state and sell them to in-state citizens all they want, because they're saying that comes under the protection of the 10th Amendment, not only the 2nd Amendment, but the 10th Amendment, which federal regulation only extends to intercommerce trade. Any interstate trade or any interstate dealings does not have federal authority. Texas is also introducing a law that bans any federal officer or agency to come into the state of Texas to enforce any federal gun laws. They will actually be arrested and face charges by the state of Texas. This was interesting. This is actually a lawmaker said this is a bill that he was going to propose if there was any gun legislation actually passed. And basically what his statements in his outline of his bill was that, let's say they pass it where there's gun registration or gun confiscation, and a federal officer comes to your door, knocks on your door. They're saying that it's illegal for a federal officer to enforce that because they are saying it's unconstitutional and the state's not recognizing any federal ban. What would that mean then? If that was actually a law passed by the state, that means that federal agent at your door automatically becomes an enemy and a criminal of the state. So he would be no different than any other guy trying to break into your house, trying to take your things. So in the state of Texas, we're pretty liberal when it comes to home invasions, self-defense, force, that's lethal force. So to me, they would all kind of encompass under that same umbrella. This was an article that I came across, Freedom Watch. It's a group out of Florida. If you don't know them, go look them up. They filed a lawsuit in federal court yesterday in Florida, and they want to eliminate the task force and prevent any of its proposals from becoming law. They're saying that under the 1972 Federal Advisory Committee Act requires presidential task force that include non-federal government officials to meet in public and publish notice of meetings in the Federal Register 15 days ahead of time. So what that means is when Obama created the task force and they invited gun lobbies such as the NRA, gun lobbies such as NRA, Walmart, different groups, and they go behind closed doors. That is not compliant to the 1972 Federal Advisory Committee Act. It requires them to meet in public. It also requires them to publish 15 days ahead of time their time, date, and location of where they're going to have the meetings. His quote is, President Obama and Vice President Biden have thumbed their noses at the law instead been holding closed door meetings with special interest lobbyists on both sides of the issue. That would be Walmart and NRA. The American people, whose right to gun ownership stems from colonial times and are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, are being illegally shut out of the process. And I like that last word, enshrined. That means it's embedded without removal. And it's in the Constitution. And we are being illegally shut out of the process if they can hold these closed-door meetings. This is just a little survey real quick. I found this survey. We've been hearing all kinds of stuff about Obama going up there and saying 6 out of 10 Americans believe there should be gun control. Most Americans believe this. Most Americans believe that. Every time he says that, I look around and say, is there some sort of secret survey or secret poll that they do that gets him all these facts, or does he just make this shit up as he goes along? So I found about 7 different surveys, and a lot of them didn't have a whole lot of voting polls to it. You know, you're talking 30, 40, 50, 60,000. But this one I came across had a massive amount compared to the other ones voting, and I just kind of wanted to share this with you guys. And this is not like a conservative website where only pro-gun people go, or a liberal website where only anti-people go. This is just a couple of different surveys I found online. All the other surveys that I did find, all in favor no gun legislation, but I didn't do it. I did not post this one to do that. This one's just for sheer numbers. But should the federal government regulate guns of any type? 23% said yes, 76% said no. Should Congress ban semi-automatic weapons? 16% no, 16% yes, 83% no. If Congress does not act, should President Obama use an executive order, ban or restrict the control of sales of semi-automatic weapons? 14% said yes, 85% said no. Now I'm going to stop on this one real quick. The no bothers me. 22,000 people still said no. A lot of people say, well, 85 people said yes. 85% said no. To me, that's crazy, because when you're a citizen of the United States, you have an oath. If you're an illegal immigrant and you become a U.S. citizen, you take the same oath. You take the same oath in the military. You take the same oath when you're in office, and it's to uphold the Constitution, not pieces of it, not parts of it, the entire document. If you tell an elected official, or if you promote any acts that are unconstitutional, in my opinion, you've denounced your citizenship. And if you're an elected official, you should be impeached. But I know it's only 14%, but that kind of bothered me. Does Second Amendment give you the right to bear arms without infringement? 86% said yes, and 13% said no, they don't agree with that. Without infringement, so there could be a lot of interpretation there. Well, that's it, folks. I just kind of wanted to give an update on Obama's speech yesterday, kind of give you a couple of facts about it. We're going to hear a lot more information as the days and weeks to come, because they're still going to have to draft a bill, get it to the floor. It's probably going to get buried back and forth until something gets passed. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching, and keep up the good fight.